Hi there, this is Eshu. I'm the abbot here at Zenwest Buddhist Society. This Living Zen-podcast is just one of the many resources we've created at Zenwest to make Zen practice and training more available and accessible to people all over the world. Instructional videos, printable resources, and much, much more are also available on our website at www.zenwest.ca. If you're a regular listener, I'd love to hear from you. So please drop me an email at office@zenwest.ca and let me know who you are, how you got started, and what brought you to Zen. Everything we make available in person and online at Zenwest is only possible because of the support of our members and associates, people like you. If the efforts of our community are making a difference in your life, I'd like to invite you to show your support and take part in making it happen by becoming an associate or member of the Zenwest Sangha. You can do this by clicking the Join Us tab on our website at www.zenwest.ca. Thank you for your support, and thanks for listening.
I've really been wanting to talk about chanting for some time. And I feel like today is a great opportunity. I hope that, Cezanne, I hope you don't feel like I've been picking on you too much. But chanting is something that I don't think it's very well understood at all in our culture. Actually, that's not true. I think that when we chant, we treat chanting differently than we do everything else. And so we make a mistake in not understanding the place that chanting has in Buddhism and in Zen and as a tool for practice. So I'm going to talk a lot about chanting today. And I hope that this can really transform how we approach chanting. So as we all know, Buddhism is a tradition that started in India. And in India, before Buddhism, there was a very extensive chanting, practice of chanting. In most religious traditions in India, there was some form of chanting. And we're all totally aware of this. You've heard Om, you've heard that, The Simpsons have it on The Simpsons, and, Family Guy, I'm sure. Om, everyone's heard of Om. Om is a one syllable of a mantra. Om Muni Padme Hum. Yeah. Om Muni Padme Hum. Right? And so that's actually a Buddhist chant, but that character Om predates Buddhism by hundreds, if not thousands of years. It was recognized in Indian traditions as the seed syllable, the cosmic resonance. It's the sound that the universe makes is actually what it's supposed to be. Om. So when you hear people saying Om, they're not just saying a character, they're actually practicing resonating harmoniously with the sound of the universe. And in many Buddhist sutras and in many Buddhist teachings, the Buddha recited mantra, these syllables, these kind of root syllables, in response to questions about what could be done about this or what could be done about that, or how do I protect myself from this and how do I protect myself from that. These words don't have any literal meaning, and they're said to attune with energies in the universe. So I guess you could say in some ways, if you want to think about it that way, they're spells. They are incantations to harmonize and bring about mysterious forces that are present in the universe. That's one way you can look at them. I'm not much of a kind of as strange as it might strike some of you, I'm not really a big believer in that kind of mystic perspective. But I am a big believer in the power of words when they are unified with intention and attention. The difference between no and no is felt and experienced. When you tell someone, I think you're a great person, no, I think you're a great person. And I think you're a great person. I think if you change how your heart is behind a word, the impact and meaning and power of that word is transformed. And arguably, you could say, well, what's the difference then? If I believe that mystically intoning I love you, and that has a magical power over people, and saying I love you with attention and heart and intention, and say by unifying those things, it has an impact on people that's very powerful. I don't know, take your pick, whichever you like, magic or unified attention and intention, whatever works for you. So that tradition of chanting and recognizing that when one person says, I love you, or when one person says, I'm sending out loving kindness and a hope for you to be well and to be happy and for you to be free of anger, enmity, and ill will, this is a basic metta chant or metta meditation. That when one person is thinking of us that way, or one person is regarding us or holding us in their heart one way, it means something to us. But when a group of people who are trained in bringing their attention to something get together and all direct their minds and energy and hearts, then maybe this is a more powerful thing. And this is take it or leave it, believe it or disbelieve it. This is an aspect of Dharma practice. And from a practical perspective, I don't know how provable any of that is. I've heard of studies where they checked out the power of prayer, and then I also heard that those studies were total bunk as well. But from my perspective as a Zen priest, I'm less concerned with the impact on what the magic power of it is, as to what the impact of the person who trains themselves to bring their mind and their heart and their body into unified focus. And so for me, however you want to hold those things, I think it's important to recognize that what we're doing when we're doing these chants is totally harmonious, it's totally unified with every other aspect of practice, in that the point of it is to bring our hearts, to bring our minds, to bring our voices, to bring our bodies into unified activity with our fullest attention. And so I think that when we treat our chanting in this way, it really does transform the power of that practice for our own experience. Because I think one of the things that we can really do is to sort of say, oh, this chanting is this really weird thing that's kind of fun or it's kind of interesting, but it's not a really important part of practice. And if we can just get through the chanting and get on with the real practice, then I'll be happy. So I'll just put up with the chanting and bite my tongue and get through it. But what we're doing is we're actually missing a very powerful opportunity, and we're looking over a mirror. The chanting is a mirror for how we engage with every aspect of our life. We have resistance to applying ourselves fully to chanting. We have resistance to mispronouncing things or doing the wrong thing or being thought a fool of. And so we constantly hold back. I don't believe there's anybody who has a voice that can't do chanting and do it well and wholeheartedly. But I do believe that that's a difficult thing to do. So I wanted to talk about some practices in chanting that, there's a few things to say. One of the things about spells, and we use in Zen, you'll often hear the term dharani. When we chant, we say the dharani of this or the dharani of that. And the word dharani can be translated as vessel, like a ship that you put something on, a vessel, container, or it's often can be translated as spell. And the meaning of spell is actually vessel or container. It's something that contains meaning and intention and power. And I was thinking about a story in which, so in the understanding of dharani, original understanding of dharani, going back to the beginning of Buddhism, it's important to understand that the pronunciation of syllables is actually important to the power of the dharani. And there's a very funny story I heard about. In Sanskrit, if you look up these old sutras, many of the sutras have dharani in them, in the middle of them, begin with them or end with them, and they're broken down. In the Tibetan tradition, monks learn dozens of dharanis for doing well in your studies and doing, dharanis for avoiding earthquakes and house fires and temple protecting spirits and medical well-being and all kinds of things. And each of them have a pronunciation, and they study them with the intention to learn them well. There are actually professors in the monastic setting whose specialty is the pronunciation of symbols of characters for syllables for dharani. Because if you pronounce it incorrectly, it doesn't do anything. It's like, and I thought, it's funny, and people wouldn't be really familiar with that idea. But then a couple things. I've been watching this sort of frivolous show called Supernatural. And in it they do a lot of exorcisms, and the exorcisms are always in Latin. And if you don't do the syllables properly in the exorcism, if your pronunciation in Latin is incorrect, then the exorcism doesn't work. So you have to be very careful. And then the other place I remember it is in Harry Potter. In the very first movie, there is a part where they're in charms class and they're practicing the spell Wingardium Leviosa, and Ron's trying to do it, and Hermione says, "It's Leviosa, not Leviosa." "All right, you do it then," and she does it. So this idea that the pronunciation of syllables, the correct pronunciation of syllables, has an impact. And I think, again, even if you take the mystic quality out of it, just what I was demonstrating earlier about saying something simple as "I love you," or "I think you're great," or whatever, the pronunciation of it is important. And of course, this is one of the major problems that we have with email, is that you never know what the intention or pronunciation or emphasis of what a person is saying. So this is really important. So to get to the funny story. So in Japan, Buddhism came through from India, through China, and into Japan. And so when dharani were translated they recognize, and we're taught, of course, that when you translate you can't translate a Dharani. First of all, they don't really have meanings. Even if the word has a meaning, if it's in the context of a Dharani, the sort of mundane meaning of the word is irrelevant, right? Like, so say, for example, the word can is in a Dharani. You can't translate it meaning like a tin can. Like, that's not what it means in the context of the Dharani. It means something totally else. So they recognize they couldn't translate it. So what we have to do is transliterate it, or sort of like find a syllable, because the Sanskrit looks like this, but Chinese and Japanese don't read that language. So we have to find a syllable that emulates that sound. Right? So we can say, this Dharani in our language is this set of characters. And again, all of those characters that have the sound have their own meanings that aren't related to the meaning of the thing, right? Of the Dharani. So there was this story where this whole contingent of Geshis, Geshe is like it's a academic title. They're Tibetan Buddhist monks, and they're highly educated, highly studied, came to give some lectures on the Heart Sutra at Bodhimanda Zen Center in New Mexico. And that's a Zen center. And so every morning they would chant the Heart Sutra in Japanese, right? And so at the end of the Heart Sutra, as we know, we chant it all the time, there's a Dharani. And the Dharani, as is translated in our English, is Gate, Gate, Para, Gate, Para Sam Gate Bodhisvaha, right? And that's actually the Sanskrit. But in Japanese, it's Gyate, Gyate, Hara Gyate, Hara So Gyate, Boji Sawaka. So, after several days of these Tibetan monks practicing and participating in these sutra talks and sutra practice, one of them sort of pulled one of the organizers over and said, "Do these people really know that like what they're doing is absolutely no good? It has no power. They're chanting it wrong. They're doing it wrong." So, well, I guess you guys don't think that's funny. I think it's hilarious because it's like, hundreds of years of Japanese people have been chanting the sutra in this way, and these Tibetans are just going like, why are you doing that? That makes absolutely no sense. So, paying attention to the sutras is, and how we chant the sutras is important. In the Japanese tradition, actually, there is a similar attitude toward, I can't remember what the term for it is, but it's like there's a belief that the characters resonate in a particular way, and if you put them together in a particular way, they have particular powers, and so pronunciation is very important. And this is historically, it's not just like a superstitious belief, it has been a very pervasive tradition in Japan, so much so that when the Mongolian hordes or serious weather was happening, the emperor would announce that like everybody would have to go to the temple and chant the same thing at the same time for the benefit of the nation. When the Mongolian hordes were coming across the water, there was a national practice of chanting for the protection of the island. And this is where the kamikaze, the great wind, came and actually sank the Mongolian fleet before it came to Japan, and the whole island was saved. And this is not a lightly held belief in Japan. So when I was trained, and one of the ways that we can really hold, whether you sort of buy into this stuff or not, it's kind of irrelevant. But when we chant, the way that I was trained is that when we chant as a group, particularly something like a Dharani, one of the reasons that we chant as a group is that we recognize that this kind of chanting, this powerful group chanting of loaded, cosmically loaded syllables is difficult. And every one of us is going to screw up at some point. But when we chant as a group, the idea is that somebody's going to get it right on every syllable. One of us is. And so when we do this, it's like, if to use the spell term, we're casting a spell together. So the dharana of temple protection is we are unified in purpose of expressing this intention for this temple to as the dedication tells us, maintaining the strength, health, and long life of this temple. So this is our intention, and we cast this spell together. And when I first started training, you know how sometimes there's just a total screw up in the chanting, and like the drum is doom doom and no one else is chanting. If that ever happened, you have to start over. You have to go back to the beginning and start over again, because the spell is broken, and we have to. They never used this term, but this is the way that it was trained. Again, I don't think it's that. I don't think you have to hold it that way. I think one of the things that we can do is really understand that this practice of seamless attention, this practice of bringing ourselves wholeheartedly with energy, with intention, with attention to everything that we do, that's the fundamental practice. My perspective of the magic side of it, or the whatever, is a way of motivating ourselves to bring our best game, our whole life, to each activity that we're doing. Always in our lives and in our relationships and in our work, we're looking for a way to hold back, to reserve 25% just in case. Whenever I sometimes say, everybody put your hand up, and people put their hand up, and I say, no, really put your hand up, and everyone goes like this, because we never start at 100%. We always start at 60 to 70%. Everything in our life, when we're engaging somebody in conversation, when we're going to the store to order something, when we're out walking down the street, we're 60 to 70% at best there. A bear jumps out, and all of a sudden, woo! We're there! Oh, much more. Suddenly our partner grabs us and embraces us and gives us a big wet kiss. Whoa! We're there. But we don't sort of show up a lot in our lives fully. And so these practices that we have in Zen, the practice that we have is to show up more and more fully in every aspect. Not just the ones where our lives are being threatened or they're really super fun or anything like that, but especially when we catch ourselves hesitating, when we catch ourselves going, I don't want to do this, when we catch ourselves going, this is hard, and our natural sort of feeling is to pull away from it, to try to avoid it. This is hard, this is difficult, this is unpleasant. And to start to cultivate this attitude of, this is difficult, lean in. This is hard, lean in. This is uncomfortable, lean in. And what we start to find is that when we lean in, when we become more present in our lives, when we apply more of ourselves, more of our heart, more of our mind, more of our voices and our bodies, our attention and intention, that gap between inside and outside, where difficulty and second thinking and self-doubt arise, that gap starts to shrink. And we start to see that, just as I am, I have all that's required to meet this circumstance and fulfill it completely. The only thing missing is me. The only thing missing is my awareness and my attention and my intention. When we're chanting and we have all of these sort of different pages, we have chant and dedication and chant and dedication, our tendency is to want to sort of set up and prepare, to sort of take a break and take a breath and step back. And so the practice we have in Rinzai Zen is to lean in and to work together and to recognize we don't uphold this whole thing by ourselves, that we're collaboratively engaged in this activity. So as the chant is coming to an end, and if I'm the Dentsu, I'm ringing the last bells, and the last line of the chanting is happening, I'm actually knowing that I'm coming right after this last syllable. So I need to take a breath while you are all chanting your last syllable, so that as your last syllable is diminishing, my first syllable is coming up. One. So there's no gap. We chant through the whole dedication. Everybody is again chanting all bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, being maha prajna. I'm breathing paramita, because as the last syllable dies, my first syllable starts. Tori and Zenji's bodhisattvas vow. And then everybody joins in before my voice even dies. They cut me off, and that's why I'm holding it. I'm holding it so that everybody knows where to start. It's this call and response, back and forth. And I tell you, it's been very interesting. This summer, I asked Maggie if there was anything I could do to sort of that would make our relationship more fun. She's been doing musicals and plays lately, and I made this commitment to have more of a normal life, or try to do a little bit more self-care, develop a life beyond the Zen Center. So we decided that we would audition for the same play. So we both got roles in A Christmas Carol, the musical. And as some of you know, I've taken a couple of years of vocal lessons as well, so I feel like I have the tools required. But for me, an experience of singing with a group of people who also have taken time to refine and develop their tools through practice, in the space of an afternoon, we do one song, and it's broken down into parts. This is your part, and this is what it sounds like, and there's the melody, and this is a part where, we're going to break this group into three, and this is this group's part, and this is this group's part, and this is this group's part. And when we do it all together, this note is a chord, and this note is a chord, and it sounds, and it's all broken down. And then by the end of the afternoon, we sing it through, and it's powerful. It's magic. It can evoke tears, and it can evoke joy, and it can evoke, goosebumps and hair sticking up on the back of your neck, particularly in this musical. And we might say that's magic. We might say that has a profound effect. When we talk about in Zen, Sangha, the treasure of Sangha, the real power, the real juice in the Sangha treasure is that when we come together as a group, and not just sort of like coming together as a bunch of individuals in the same place. That's not what I'm talking about. When we unify, when we harmonize, when we become one in practice and awareness, when I'm worried about what I'm doing dissolves into paying attention to my part in something much bigger than myself, there's a transformation that takes place that's very powerful. When we move from being one person in a group of many people to being a part in a community, a part of a sangha, unified in purpose, unified in activity, and in the context of chanting, unified in voice and unified in intention, it's powerful. I mean, and I tend to words like powerful, but it's not just powerful. It's healing. It's loving. It's accepting. It's revitalizing. It's deeply nourishing. With our voices, when we come together with our voices, all this talk that I do about one true nature arising from one origin, our true home, this immediately becomes a felt experience when we dissolve into one, when we come with our voices. When we do chanting at the university, or even when we do chanting here, the origin of this toning exercise that we all do, the origin of that toning exercise is simply to take out the most challenging, the most intellectually distracting aspects of chanting and get down to the brass tacks of it. We start with humming because we don't even have to open our mouth. We just have to make a sound. And by making the sound, it's very easy for everybody to dissolve into it, to experience that. So by doing that at the front, it's not just about hearing. It's not just about hearing that we're all together. It's that there's actually an experience of feeling the vibration, feeling that we are all unified together, that we are one. That just this simple sound of humming or making a tone, a single syllable, it gives us this felt experience that we are one. That's the basis of chanting. Then we can wrap some words around that. We can point an intention in a particular direction. But the basis is that it comes from our heart. It comes from our awareness. It comes from our recognition and embrace of our fundamental connection. Chanting isn't just, it's not like when we chant we become connected either. That's important. Chanting is just a recognition that we are connected. It's a demonstration that we are connected. It's an affirmation of that connection. So, take the words I've said today about chanting and think about them and explore them and experiment with them. Hold your chants in a way that's appropriate for you, in a way that resonates with you. Chanting is a tool to invite you to embody your life through your mind and through your heart, through your voice, through your physical body. Chanting is a way of invoking the cosmic power of the cosmos, maybe. Whatever works for you. As long as the bottom line is that we don't take this practice lightly or as an adjunct to quote-unquote real Zen practice. This is a form and a tradition that has existed as a part of Buddhist practice from the beginning of Buddhist practice. It's not an adjunct in any way, shape, or form. There are whole traditions of Buddhism where the practice is chanting. They don't do zazen. So please take what I've said today and take from it what works for you. Explore the things that I've said, even if you think this is poppycock. Magic. Oh, that's unscientific. It's illogical. Try to hold it from that perspective. See how it works for you. Okay, thank you. Thanks for listening to the Living Zen podcast. If you follow Living Zen through iTunes, I would very much appreciate it if you would take a moment to let me know what you think about it by rating or reviewing the podcast, so that new listeners can also hear what you have to say. Thank you for your time and for your support.